Sometimes we kick them out, we have quotas, we have race-based admissions, we have all sorts of stuff. People are afraid of immigration. And this is not unique to America. I know all around the world people are afraid of immigration. In fact, the fear of immigration from Western Europe is part of the reason for this latest batch of nativism in the United States, is that people are looking at Western Europe and saying, bad stuff happens there. If strange brown people come into that country, we have a country. If strange brown people come into it, bad stuff will happen to us. Which logically almost sort of kind of makes sense. What are people afraid of? First thing they're afraid of is jobs. I think everybody remembers this South Park episode. They took her germs. The first fear that stokes nativism in any country is that the immigrants who come in are going to take jobs from us, jobs that we could do, and they're going to compete with us at a lower wage. They're going to take opportunities from people who are already born here, who are citizens, who abide by the law, who are white, who are Christian, who are, third-generation American. Whatever it is, they took our jobs. This is a huge fear. Second fear, terrorism. People are afraid that the people who come into the country are coming carrying bombs. Found a cartoon for that one too. You'll notice that the monkey has the dynamite in his feet. That is actually from a prior batch of nativism. This person is meant to be Irish, because the terrorists change, but it's always the terrorists coming from somewhere else. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. Everybody's always too dangerous. The Irish are too dangerous, the Italians are too dangerous, the Jews are too dangerous, and now the Muslims are too dangerous. Everybody's too dangerous. But this is a legitimate fear too. People are afraid that bad people are going to come to their country and hurt them or their families. Welfare. I think we even talked about at lunch. There's a Milton Friedman quotation that you can't have open borders with a welfare state. It's actually usually flipped exactly on its head with the implications. Everyone should go back and read the context. But cross the border, get a check. There is a fear that non-native people who come to the country, will use social programs and benefits, that they will stress our welfare system, that our hardworking American, good, solid, patriotic tax dollars will go to feed large families of lazy people who took the time to come across the border. It's amazing to me the logic that people are so intent on getting welfare benefits and not doing anything that they'll pay tens of thousands of dollars to coyotes to ride in the back of a panel truck across the Sonoran Desert, risking death, just to hang out. But that is how the argument goes. So, if we want to be persuasive in advocating for open borders in this climate of fear, we can't just go straight to free market libertarian principles, because, as I said before, nobody cares. We have to talk to the fears and the concerns of the American people and show them how open immigration for peaceful people allays all of those fears, those main fears that people have about open immigration, better than building a wall. How do we do that? What Americans really want, more than anything else, is a better life for their children and their communities. That's what people want. They want to have good jobs, good homes, stable, safe communities with a better quality of life. That is what they want, and that is what immigration gives. Now, I want to talk about one way to present this policy, and it's a way to present the policy. It is in the context of the American legal system, but this kind of thing is applicable around the world. I have an idea. This is not a platform plank, but it's a pretty solid idea. How many people in this room own guns? You don't have to raise your hand if it's illegal in your country. How many people in this room have concealed carry permits? Permits to carry that weapon to protect themselves and others. Okay? What a lot of people in the gun rights community know is that it used to be that the gun rights regime across the United States, much of it was what's called may issue, where the citizen has to go to the government and present a good reason why they should be able to carry a gun. They have to explain why I need to have a gun, and then if the bureaucrat, usually a county sheriff or a police chief, decides that that meets the acceptable reasons to defend yourself, then you can exercise that natural human right to be safe in your person and property. One of the major shifts in American policy that has been in pro-libertarian direction over the last few decades has been the shift to a shall issue concealed carry regime. Basically what that means is I go into, in my case, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office in Colorado was the last place I applied for a permit. I give them fingerprints, I give them my name, they run a background check, and I give them filing fee. If they can't prove a reason why I am not allowed to have a concealed carry permit, they can't prove a criminal background, they can't prove that I have some sort of mental defect, they can't prove that I'm a prohibited purchaser or possessor in some way, I get the permit. The burden shifts to the government. And going back to kind of how the criminal justice system in the country is so jacked up, the burden is part of the reason it's jacked up. Is that a lot of the lack of mens rea requirements in federal criminal law, a lot of the way that the system stacked against you, it pushes the burden on you to prove yourself innocent, even though technically under our Constitution that's not really what's happening. In reality it really is. So my idea is very, very simple. Shall issue entry visas. Basically there'd be a presumption of issuance. If you are a person who wants to enter the United States of America, you come to a border checkpoint or a consulate. You present a reasonable visa fee, something on the order of the $5,000 to engage in, what is that, Article 20 or 22 that has the filing fee? Is that 22?
They both cost.
Okay, so basically you provide the U.S. government with $5,000 or $10,000. You find a market clearing number. You have a presumption of issuance. You provide a health and background check to make sure that no one is convicted of a violent crime. Now this would not count political crimes, and many of the countries people come from make crimes out of almost anything. So you would want it to be something where it's a real crime, a libertarian crime. There's an ease of entry and departure. You provide a photo and fingerprints, and it is a presumption of issuance. A bureaucrat would have to show a particular reason why a particular person is dangerous or otherwise inadmissible to the United States. Not the other way around. You wouldn't have this bizarro Kafkaesque world of people who want to come from war-torn countries having to try and find records to prove that they're peaceful people from a country that's being riven by war. And it's not realistic to expect that, and it's kind of cruel and unusual. The advantages of this: it allows people to fill jobs in the economy on a demand basis. Part of the reason that the labor market in the United States is so jacked up is that after the border was tightened subsequent to the Reagan amnesty, you can't go back. It costs so much money and so much risk to your safety that people come to the United States illegally without government permission, and they're afraid to go home. So even if they lose their job, even if the economy tanks, even if their skills are no longer needed, even if there's a better opportunity back in Guadalajara or Sonora, they can't leave because the opportunity cost of trying to come back is way too high. This would allow people to come and go with the fluctuations in the labor market. It immediately engages immigrants in the community. So part of the reason that Western Europe has so many problems with asylum seekers and immigrants from other countries or other cultures is that they put them in ghettos. Government control works backwards of how people think it works. Governments and bureaucrats have an instinct that the harder I grasp, the more control I will have. What libertarians understand is the real world doesn't work that way. The less control you try and take over people, the more good things come out of it. A government that tries to get 90% of your income in taxes will end up getting hardly anything. Like, just look at Piketty's debt. But a government that imposes, say, a 10 or 15% flat tax will get almost universal compliance and much more revenue by trying to take less. So this would engage immigrants directly in the community with jobs. They would engage in the language, they would engage in the culture, and then assimilate better than has happened in the banlieues in France or the Nordic countries, where they kind of put all the Somalis in a ghetto and then they're surprised that bad things happen. They also don't let them work, which anybody who studied human psychology knows that working and providing for your family is fundamentally something that creates human dignity and prevents people from being radicalized. It provides knowledge of who's here, which addresses the safety question. Everybody's freaking out. ISIS might be coming over the border from Mexico. Well, the best way to know exactly who's in the country is make the door so big that nobody wants to crawl over the wall or through the window. You make it so that you want to tell us that you're coming to the country. You'd rather give $5,000 to the US government than $10,000 to a coyote who's going to let you die in the Sonoran Desert. Why not? You engage the Napster model. Remember how Napster died? Napster didn't die because of lawsuits and crackdowns and government and prohibition. Napster died because Apple said, I'm going to set up iTunes, and for $1, you can get the song you want with no viruses, without having to spend 10 hours on the internet looking for exactly the song you want. It made piracy no longer economical, so people complied with the rules because you lowered the transaction cost. The entry fee discourages the potential free rider. Now, I don't believe that anyone comes to the country for welfare. That makes no sense to me as a human being based on human psychology. But if you think that, making sure that there's a fee and a form before you come means that nobody's going to do that just to get food stamps. That's stupid. It ends criminal human smuggling. Now, the drug cartels have been substantially weakened, at least in South and Latin America, mostly the Mexican ones. The further south, they engage in things like cocaine and methamphetamine. But the ones that engaged in the marijuana trade have been substantially weakened by another great libertarian progressive move in the United States with cannabis legalization. American cannabis is much better, and you buy American, so Americans work. Criminal human smuggling is one way that the cartels have filled in the revenue gap in their coffers. And the Trump administration wants to give more money to criminal human smugglers. The Libertarian Party, we disagree slightly. It improves our economy. We would have a more dynamic economy and a dynamic labor market. And the dirty secret of America, or the beautiful secret of America, is we have never been able to rely on only the people who are already born in our country. Ever. From the founding. We've never been able to. And every time that we try and crack down on how many people come into the country, a recession follows. What happens is, everything goes good, we get a small recession, everyone tries to lock the border, kick the people out, you get things like the end of the Bracero Project and Operation Wetback, and then we go into a recession, and no one seems to know why we go into such a deep recession after we kick out a bunch of people from the labor market. But most of the people in this room understand. And also, if libertarians were to implement this, I don't really like taxes very much because they're theft. It would reduce the government debt. I would make sure that any policy that proposed this program, 80% of that entry fee goes directly to the principal balance of the national debt of the United States of America. So while the president seems less than likely to be able to make Mexico pay for the wall, I think we could make Mexicans pay for all of the national debt that our government has racked up over the decades. And wouldn't that be nice? Now I want to address one thing. I talked to the young lady from, in the back. And I forgot your name already, but it's a card. I have it. Yes, Maria. Maria said, and Maria is somewhat skeptical of open immigration, that we need to have a smart immigration policy. And I've heard this in the news. You may have seen the RAISE Act that suggests that we shift to a points-based model like a Singapore, an Australia, Canada, and identify These are the good people we want to have come into the country, not the bad people. How many people in here think central planning works? Anybody?
Dan.
Other than Dan, we have a debate coming up later. How many people here think central planning works any better in a labor market than it does in the market for goods or services? The real question I have for proponents of smart immigration policy is, who do we want to have the good jobs? If you look at the RAISE Act and you look at the point system, you'll find that it is heavily skewed towards very high-paying jobs in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. It is heavily skewed to allow foreign workers entry visas, privileged entry visas, to take the highest paying jobs in the United States. Now, that may be beneficial for tech companies. I can see why they would want that, because even a high-paid foreign worker is paid slightly less than a well-paid American worker. But if we're going to dabble in immigration policy, if we're going to try and centrally plan our labor market, why would we skew the incentives so that the people who get the jobs are the people at the top of the economic ladder? If you allow for a dynamic labor market, if you allow for an open immigration, then the people who come in and fill primarily, although there would be probably some tech workers, but primarily the low-paying jobs at the bottom of the labor market, which then creates competition, creates better opportunities, creates a better quality of life for Americans and their children, which is what, going back, Americans really want, and leaves the jobs that we don't want for the people who want the opportunity so bad that they'll do it at a reduced cost, improving everyone's quality of life, because every voluntary exchange makes both sides better. This is the new Colossus. Because I go pretty fast, I'm gonna read the whole thing. I know you probably know it. I followed Guy Kawasaki's 10-20-30 rule of presentations. No more than 10 slides, no more than 20 minutes, and no smaller than 30-point font. And this is smaller. But the Libertarian Party is the only political party left in the United States that actually believes the words that are on the Statue of Liberty, that lives by them. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand blows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor, the twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. We will rebuild that golden door. Now, I want to close with this. I, like many of you, probably saw the Time article that gave you a little web quiz where you could see whether or not you qualify under the RAISE Act. And I will have you know that thanks to my law degree, which I don't value quite as highly as the United States does, I actually scored 31 points. I would be able to come to the United States by 1 point. But you know who couldn't come to the United States? On April 1st, 1902, 19-year-old Francois Sarwark arrived in New York City Harbor with $8 in his pocket. That man was my great-grandfather. If we had had a smart immigration policy, he would have never become a machinist in South Bend. And his son would have never moved to Phoenix and dropped the Z out of the name because it's really hard to pronounce, and it was World War II and it wasn't popular to be Polish outside of Chicago. And started a used car dealership and had his son follow him into the business and build a good enough life for his son to go get degrees in computer science and law, and then eventually get elected to be the least important person in the Libertarian Party. We can't plan freedom. We can't plan success. We can't plan how to make America the greatest country that ever was or ever will be. We have to let go of control, but we have to tell people how we're going to let go of control in a way that addresses their fears. Thank you very much.